Today, we're diving deep into the official Family Income and Expenditure Survey for December 2025. We're going to unpack what these numbers really tell us about how household finances looked as the year wrapped up. Hello, this is Japanese Economic Review Channel, where we turn all those complex numbers into a story that actually makes sense. So, let's get right into it. So the big question is, how did Japanese households handle their money as 2025 came to a close? Were people out there spending, or were they starting to tighten their belts? Let's find out. And bam, here's our headline number. Real consumer spending for households with 2 or more people dropped by 2.6% compared to this time last year. That's a pretty decent dip, and it tells us that, on average, people were buying less stuff and fewer services than they were a year ago. But a single number never, ever tells the whole story. To really get what's going on, we have to peel back the layers and see what's driving this change. So let's break it down. So what were people actually cutting back on? When you dig into the numbers, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. It looks like households were hitting pause on some of those major purchases. And wow, check this out. The scale of the cuts is pretty striking. Just look at cars. Automotive-related spending was the single biggest drag on the total number, mostly because people just weren't buying new vehicles. Right behind that, you've got facility repairs, so fewer home renovations, and then miscellaneous spending like donations. You see the theme, right? These are all big-ticket, non-essential items, which really points to a more cautious consumer. But hold on, it wasn't all about cutting back. While people were definitely saving money on cars and home repairs, they were also choosing to spend more in other specific areas. This wasn't just a blanket spend less situation. It was more like a conscious shift in priorities. So, where did that money go instead? Right here. It looks like people were investing in themselves. The biggest jumps were in medical services, especially dental fees. And look at recreation. People were buying things like musical instruments, and they were spending more on experiences, like domestic package tours. So it seems like the focus shifted away from big material goods and more towards health, hobbies, and personal experiences. Of course, spending is only half the picture. You can't really get it without looking at the other side of the coin. Income. Was there more money coming in, less, or was it just holding steady? Let's take a look. Okay, now we're going to zoom in on worker households in particular. This group is so important, and their income trends can tell us a ton about the health of the broader economy. And here's the headline number for income. The real income for worker households after you adjust for inflation changed by, 0%. Nothing. It was completely flat compared to last year. Now, I know what you're thinking. 0% sounds pretty boring, right? But just like with the spending data, the real story is hiding just beneath the surface. And believe me, it's actually pretty interesting. Okay, so the reason it all nets out to 0 is because of this crazy balancing act going on. Take a look. The head of the household's total real income actually fell by 2.6%. And that was almost entirely because bonuses got hit hard, down a massive 5.6%. But that big drop was canceled out by 2 things. Regular income went up a bit, and, this is really important, the spouse's income grew by a healthy 1.9%. All right, real quick, let's talk about a key concept for our next slide, disposable income. You can just think of it as take-home pay. It's the money that's actually left in your pocket for spending or saving after taxes are paid. This is the number that really matters for day-to-day decisions. And here's where the story gets a little brighter. Even though that top-line real income number was flat, real disposable income, the take-home pay, it actually went up by 1.2%. So this suggests that even with stagnant earnings, maybe some changes in taxes or other deductions meant households ended up with slightly more cash on hand. Okay, so let's pull all of this together. We've got spending down, income flat, but take-home pay is up a little. What's the big picture here? What does all this data really tell us about the Japanese consumer at the end of 2025? So let's recap the highlights. 1. Consumer spending fell, mostly because people put the brakes on buying big things like cars. 2. Instead, they shifted that spending towards experiences and well-being. Think healthcare and travel. 3. Workers' real income was stuck, mainly because of that big drop in bonuses. And 4, despite all that, the actual money people had to spend, their take-home pay did see a small but important increase. And all of this leaves us with one final, really crucial question. Households had a bit more take-home pay, but they chose not to spend it on big-ticket items. They opted for caution, and they redirected their money to very specific things. So what does that signal for consumer confidence as we head into the new year? That's the thought we'll leave you with.
Thank you for watching the Japanese Economic Review. We look forward to having you with us again.